Hey everybody, welcome to Beer Bros History Hour. Today we're not well, we are going to get into some history, but in light of current events, we're going to kind of draw parallels between today and maybe just before World War II and maybe World War One as well. What say you, Brutus? Hey, you changed your name back to your name. It's not Brutus anymore.
Yeah. Oh, well, it should be Brutus. I thought it was.
Well, for some reason it says your name. It doesn't say Brutus anymore.
Son of a bitch.
You wanted to remain anonymous?
I don't care.
Wait, so let's ask that question again, since we already got a foamy C.
Mm-hmm.
What's the question?
Yeah, what was the question? But
you have won your playoff course.
Are there parallels between now and World War One, World War II time period, and the build up lead up to World War?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great discussion. Great discussion, and there's a classic book, that's talking about World War One called "The Guns of August," which basically describes the lead up to the slaughter of the First World War.
There was another great book. It was called Guns of the South. You may have heard.
That was a good book.
These guys go back in time and give the Confederates AK-47s.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's funny. That's one I haven't read yet, but
you haven't read that?
No, surprisingly, right?
Obviously it's a fiction book.
Yeah,
it's an alternate history, Ben. It's one that you'll like, given your Confederate ancestry.
West Virginia, Appalachian.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, like the Civil, because the South was still very much like 1776 in their outlook, very disunified at a like colony and state kind of level, whereas the North was very regimented and very British in that regards, and obviously overwhelming techno. But it's like, so, like, my roots on my mother's side, and at that point in history, are Appalachian. So I'm not, so I don't really care about like the Deep South, for example. Don't care for other locations from that time period.
So like dueling banjos stuff.
I don't know if they.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so moving. But yeah, so here's the kind of what we're talking about, though, and this is talking about New Statesman. I don't know if New Statesman is a lefty rag or not.
I don't know either.
But this was written in 1914. I mean, in 2014. Pardon me. So obviously, that was the 100th anniversary of the Great War, as they called the First World War, because obviously that was supposed to be the war to end all wars. That's what the utopians like Woodrow Wilson were hoping for. And I'll just give some snippets here as we go along. And again, this was like, holy crap, 9 years ago now, but it's still should be relatively relevant, because of course 2014 was beginning of the Ukrainian crisis, and for some reason, Ukraine is now the heart of like Ukraine is the heart of our approaching impending nuclear holocaust for whatever stupid ass reason this corrupt
and speaking of Ukraine, though, I'm pretty sure, not everybody who listens to us is going to know what the Azov Battalion is. But when Putin said that he was going into Ukraine to denazify it, he wasn't lying. The Azov Battalion are actual Nazis. They are the grandchildren of Nazis who fled Germany after the war. And they are
a lot of them,
fucking Nazis.
there's some movement called Banderites, and I guess Banderas or Banderites were, Slavic Slavs who were sympathetic to Nazis, especially on the on the issue of Jews. So
yeah, but a lot of the Nazis a lot of Nazis fled there after the war too. And that's where they came. That's where part of that.
Well, I know a lot of them fled there to go through the port of Odessa to flee to like the global south, for example, especially Latin America. Odessa was kind of this place where they could escape out of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
I'm just trying to find a goddamn. Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about a con view of that. So here's one person, a historian, who said that 1914 analogy is flawed about the Ukraine, and this was in June 2022, so not all that long ago. Because of course, I mean, yeah. Go ahead and take over. I'll be right.
So I don't know. The the Archduke Ferdinand thing, which I think is where he was leading to.
Yeah.
I think that the only thing that would really cause it would be if, say, like if NATO's darling child there, Zelensky, was assassinated.
Maybe, yeah. That might be what's needed to draw NATO into the war.
Yeah. After all that money and weapons and everything we gave them, and then just to have him get assassinated.
So they'll have a clandestine CIA spook operation going on, and that'll off him and make it look like the Russians did it.
Well, I think they were already planning to take him out at one point. Remember when they tried to call him to a meeting in Europe? And they weren't even going to put him on a plane. Like they were going to ground transport.
Yeah.
And, have him in the fucking open where he could easily be picked off by a missile.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it was meant to happen back then, and plans changed.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably like, I don't know, 7-8 months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was, might have been more than that. I want to say it was earlier last year.
Yeah, maybe. It was a while ago for sure.
Springtime last year, maybe.
But I think that right now, like, and a lot of people don't believe it because they pay too much attention to the mainstream media and what the White House press briefings put out.
Oh yeah, no, they a good portion of America thinks that Ukraine is actually winning right now. So
yeah, honestly, on like at face value, it does appear that way, but that's because most of these people don't. Well, number one, they don't know history. They don't know the history of Russian warfare. They don't know how the Russians fight. The Russians, they rarely stand toe to toe. World War II is an exception. And they didn't even start advancing in World War II until after the siege of Stalingrad. Like the Russians will typically give up ground to buy time. So if NATO moves into Ukraine, the Russians will run. They'll harass us and shit like that, but they're not going to stand and fight. They'll lure us in deep, stretch our supply lines thin, and then they'll do what they did against the Nazis in Stalingrad and surround us with 1 million troops, put us under siege, and then fucking just hammer us with artillery until we're all destroyed.
The same game they hit the Nazis with is the same fucking game that they hit Napoleon with several hundred years earlier.
Yeah, but what they got in Stalingrad, they had 300,000 Nazis surrounded by more than 1 million Russians, and they gave them opportunity after opportunity to surrender, and Hitler would not allow them to surrender. And they hammered the Nazis with artillery and bombs until there was almost nothing left. And then they moved in, and there were a few survivors that they took prisoner. But that's what they did at Stalingrad. I mean, most people think of Stalingrad and they think of the movie Enemy at the Gates, and that was a small part of it. But the major operation was the Russians were retreating, not because they were losing, but because they were buying themselves time. And the Germans got into Stalingrad, got themselves surrounded, and pretty much annihilated.
Yep.
That's how the Russians fight.
But what the Russians would normally do is, like you said, they tactically withdraw, lure you in and buy time. And on the entire withdrawal, while they're luring you in, the enemy army, they're burning everything in sight, scorched earth policy, leaving nothing for the enemy, and just luring them into the tundra, and then surround them and destroy them.
Yeah, I mean, but the Germans ran out of ammunition. They had no ammo.
Oh, they ran out of everything. They had no food, no winter clothing. They had nothing. They were totally stretched so thin that they couldn't supply themselves. And the Russians burned anything that left for them to forage. So they had nothing.
Yeah. So, I mean, anybody looking at the situation in Ukraine and thinking that Russia is losing they don't understand the Russians.
Well, I think a huge exception to this is Russia's performance in the First World War, which was frankly absolutely horrifying. And I mean, like the Russians had been apparently terrible at warfare ever since Tsar Nicholas took the throne. And I'm trying to remember when that was. I think it was like 1894 or 1896 after his father died abruptly. Tsar Nicholas II, because shortly after he assumed the Russian throne, then he was involved in the Russo-Japanese War, which was an absolute fucking rout for the Japanese. Well, I mean, the Japanese just routed the Russians, like, and it was barely over a year. And I mean, like, something about Tsar Nicholas II just made him a completely incompetent leader because he was so young. He didn't have time to sit there with his father and observe his father being czar. He's just a total fuck up. I mean, to the point where like there was a naval battle where his fleet was exterminated by the Japanese. I mean, man, and actually, yeah. So, and then World War I, the Russian troops just did absolutely horribly against the Germans. I mean, you had like the Battle of Tannenberg, where I think it was like 100 or 150,000 Russians were surrounded, and they surrendered. I mean, and yeah, it was a 4-day battle, and I think after that battle, the Russian commander in the field committed suicide.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they handed him a pistol and was like, "Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah,
yourself.
Alexander Samsonov, after the horrifying defeat of the Russian First and Second Armies. I mean, it was basically they were destroyed.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he took a pistol the same day the battle ended and just ended it all. So
Yeah, they probably slid him the pistol and said, here, save us the trouble.
But what I'm saying is, in this current conflict, like right from the start, right from the start, Russia wasn't they weren't they were taking their time. They weren't fighting an all-out war, like an all-out, destruction campaign like we would have done, like what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. They could have had Ukraine under control in a couple of weeks if they really wanted to. That wasn't their objective.
I mean, I know there's some talk of, and look, at the end of the day, no one truly knows what's going on except for the actual people who are there on the ground. But it's like there was some talk that they were only striking, the US bio labs, for example, that are operating in Ukraine. Because people always love to forget that there were two Minsk agreements, Minsk being the capital of Belarus, but made between Russia and Ukraine to resolve their differences. And a lot of that involved, for example, autonomy for the Russian majority eastern provinces of Ukraine, not independence, not secession, just more autonomy within the Ukrainian, nation. And
Yep.
among like Ukraine swearing off NATO, for example. So there were, and for some reason these agreements kept falling through.
Yeah,
But people love to just think that all this shit happened out of the blue.
but people
See,
like to forget.
people think that because the Soviet Union's gone, that Russia's weak and all that stuff. And to some level, they're probably right. But I mean, I'm just surprised and I'm baffled at the people that seem to think that Russia couldn't level every fucking blade of grass in Ukraine tonight if they wanted to.
Yeah, but
Well,
a lot of people like to think too that, you know, like you said, they think Russia's weak and shit. But Russia has several weapon systems that we don't have a counter for. One of them being that nuclear sub that could cause a fucking radioactive tsunami that would completely drown the entire East Coast. And the other one is the hypersonic nuclear tipped missiles that could be fired from naval vessels. These hypersonic missiles, we don't have a defense for them, and we don't have a defense for that submarine either.
Won't I mean, can't the Aegis destroyers intercept things like that?
Not hypersonics, and especially because those are low angle trajectory weapons.
Well, I figured that if the Aegis destroyers are said to be able to intercept an ICBM, that they could intercept that.
Yeah, but that's different. You can see an ICBM coming from a long ways off.
But
These
they're
ones,
moving extremely fast too. They're
that
going at
doesn't
least
matter.
that
It
fast.
doesn't matter when you're flying low to the ground. You got to compensate for curvature of the Earth, and by the time that missile crests the horizon, it's already on you. You don't have time to fire a missile. That thing's moving so fast.
Never mind the Chinese have a hypersonic anti-ship missile that's specifically designed to knock out our carriers.
Yeah, except every time they've tested it, they've missed their target by almost a kilometer. So
yeah, but they'll hone that in eventually.
Yeah, but right now their guidance system for their missile isn't worth a shit.
yeah, and they're just trying to work out all the kinks right now. So
Yeah.
Once that's operational, our carrier groups better watch out.
Yeah.
So
Unless they can upgrade that, what is that? The Sea Whiz, upgrade that thing to shoot them down.
I don't know. I don't know if it could acquire the target and dispatch it. From the point of target acquisition, and when they can get a lock on it to kill it. The thing's moving so fast that by the time they detect it, they got a few seconds.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Ronnie. The difference between these hypersonic missiles launched from ships and an ICBM is like night and day. The ICBM's coming in from orbit. It's coming pretty much straight down on top of you. these things are coming, you know, maybe a couple 100 feet off the ground, and they're moving at like Mach 10. It's insane.
Yeah.
We don't have any way to shoot those down. If they're launched, they're going to hit what they intend to hit.
And
Unless
have to put Cletus out there with his scatter gun.
yeah, only bigger scatter gun would be better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think kind of get into it a little bit with the so I think World War III is definitely on the horizon here. We got the side. Huh?
Well, you know, because obviously Ukraine's being talked for whatever reason. That stupid little soup-smelling country is the heart and soul of the reason why we're approaching this situation, which is ridiculous.
They launder all the West's money, so they can't.
Yep.
They can't let them go down. They launder all the money.
This is really just an ethnic inter-Slavic conflict between two countries that have had interactions for well over a millennium. And they decided to internationalize it because that's what these scumbags do, so they can generate interest. And it's like, so, you know, Ukraine being at the heart of it all, and now we're famously 90 seconds away from, nuclear midnight per the doomsday clock, which has been in operation, by the way, since 1947. And so obviously that includes the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Speaking of the doomsday clock, I have a little article on that.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about it in a little bit? But so obviously a lot of people, we're well over 100 years now since the First World War, which I think is even frankly more haunting in a sense for me than the Second World War, because obviously the second, people were braced for the World War II because of World War I. Nothing braced humanity for World War I, though, especially in Europe, because it's like the last real war. Obviously, you look at the history of warfare, and Europeans were, like every other group of people, were fighting and killing each other for centuries. And like, it's crazy. You just even Google list of wars in Europe and you'll you'll read about hundreds of wars that you have never heard about before. Just random titles and random names. Maybe it lasted a few years. Some lasted like 80 to 100 years, like ridiculous stuff. So fast forward to the Franco-Prussian War, which was 1870 to 1871. And that was unified Germany's first real time on the world stage. Like German unification, Franco-Prussian War, the United German Empire defeats the French. And also, that's when they take the very famous Alsace-Lorraine region, which was kind of a burning heart of the French resentment for 40 years leading up to the First World War. But after the Franco-Prussian War, Europeans got together and essentially said, no more wars on the continent. We're done. This has to stop. So they essentially agreed in a conference in the 1880s to end warfare on the European continent and to focus on their colonies. So what did the Europeans spend the next 40 years doing? They fought tribesmen in Africa. That's what they did. With their advanced technology, they fought and beat tribesmen. Now, obviously, some tribes had success, against advanced European militaries. For example, Isandlwana, which was, in the Zulu War, they defeated a small British detachment. Khartoum with General Gordon I believe that was like 1884 or 1885. But generally speaking, vastly superior European armies wholesale slaughtered tribes in battle. So what did this do to those armies? That probably made them think that they were bloody invincible because they beat people with rusty, probably early 19th century firearms and bows and arrows and fucking camels. So Go to 1914, what happened? They fight each other, people who had done nothing but beat on tribes for 40 years. And now they're facing each other, and that leads to wholesale massacres. I mean, the Battle of Verdun, I think, had 1 million fatalities or casualties in general, which included many fatalities. So that's where, you know, people, and, you know, obviously that war braced people for World War II eventually, because they already knew the scale of slaughter was possible. But yeah, so this one guy, because you're seeing a lot of comparisons to World War I because of, you know, various aspects, like, you know, the buildup of arms, you know, the formation of obviously alliances, you know, the invasion of Ukraine, which some people are trying to make sort of like a, I think ridiculously, some people are trying to say is like, oh, Putin's acting like Hitler and just marching into the Sudetenland or the Anschluss. You know, he just wants to claim Russian territories and bring it back into the Russian fold, like Hitler did for German-speaking parts of countries. Well, no, that's stupid silliness. And so this one author, who's a leading historian on the First World War, said that comparing 1914 to 2022, that's when this article was written, is absolutely just flawed. It's stupid. He's a Cambridge academic, Christopher Clark. So let's see. Yeah, and he was noting that a lot of German politicians especially were quoting his work and, like, you know, as inspiration for avoiding, you know, not allowing this current situation to become 1914 all over again.
Yeah, but for me, the situation is a little different. The players are a little different, but the potential is there. The sides have been drawn. The sides are picked already. You get the BRICS nations against NATO.
Well, and even in NATO, though, that's the problem. You have conflict brewing. Like Turkey and Greece might apparently potentially go to war with each other.
Well, actually,
Which,
I just read a little bit of an article about Turkey. You remember how Finland and Sweden wanted to join NATO, right?
yep.
Well, and Turkey was the only NATO nation blocking them from doing so.
Yep.
Well, Turkey agreed to let them join, but under one condition. Sweden and Finland have to release more than 70 terrorists that they hold in jail.
Yeah, and I think they want like information on dissidents, certain dissidents, I believe, as well.
We just need to go ahead and kick Turkey out of NATO already.
Here's the thing, though, with
Well, they're not gonna do it because of the Bosphorus Strait, which is very pivotal. They're not gonna do it.
what do you guys think of this? So both India and China are part of the BRICS nations now, right?
Yep.
I have a hard time believing that India and China are going to fight alongside each other against the West.
Look,
They have their own problems.
Well, yeah, because they keep having border fights in like the Hindu Kush, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, they're like India and China are like mortal enemies. They're not going to, I don't know. I don't think that alliance is going to line up quite the way it might seem at face value.
Well, I mean, if it just strictly stays an economic issue, then I could see them sticking it out together. Because look, India at the end of the day is out for its best interest, just like every intelligent country would do. You look out for your best interest. But no, if it comes to like global slaughter, no, I don't see why they would side with China. That's suicide. China probably wants the Hindu Kush Mountains for something. Maybe just expansion. I don't know.
Well, yeah, they made a bunch of deals with the Taliban already, especially for the lithium.
Mm-hmm.
They got it's one of the biggest lithium mines in the world is there in Afghanistan, and China,
Right.
I think China just signed a deal for it.
But here's what this Professor Clark was saying about the analogy, and this is just one man, you know, one man's view, historian or not, still this one man. So he's saying the First World War began in an incredibly complex way, whereas he's saying Ukraine in 2014 was clearly a breach of the peace by just one power. I disagree with that. I mean, I'm not saying Ukraine itself breached power, but because they're proxies of NATO, I don't agree with that opinion per se. But he's saying it's a very different setup. There's no Balkan crisis. There's no sequence of will they, won't they decisions. Europe is not divided into a binary pair of alliance systems, which for now seems to be true. He was saying in June 2022, I don't know if his opinion changed, but he was saying in that time that Europe, at least Russia, is isolated this time. Now, I've seen articles in recent days where certain countries are starting to say, no, we're not going to keep arming Ukraine, especially not with like tanks, for example. And that was Hungary, that was Austria, even Croatia, which is most recently acceded to NATO, I mean to the EU, said this has to stop. We have to stop prolonging this war. And so you're starting to see cracks and all that because the people, I think, who live closest to the potential blast zone don't want that radiation falling on them. So, like, I think they're starting to be like, because you look at these high and mighty leftists and rhinos who are all sucking at the teat of the military-industrial complex, and they're talking tough shit. But it's like it's safe to say that in this country way over here. But people who are on the damn doorstep have a different viewpoint.
Oh, but here's the thing: is where technology's at now.
Well,
I
that's
don't
true.
I don't think us sitting over here on this continent are gonna be. I don't think we're gonna be above the danger this time.
Yeah, we're not untouchable this time like we were before.
No, that's true. That's why technology is a son of a bitch, and I hate it, except for medical technology.
Yeah.
Now I do give this Clark guy credit, this Professor Clark, because he I do not see it being like 1938 either. Obviously talking about the time of appeasement, and Putin is not like Hitler. So, so at least he's not some lunatic who goes on Hitler rants, I'm guessing, which is good.
Well, the mainstream media would want you to believe that Putin is Hitler. So,
well, Putin's been on TV recently, pretty much just addressing us, the populations of Western countries, making a point to tell us that he's not our enemy.
Right.
So I don't know.
I'm trying to see. Yeah, this Clark was knighted by the Queen when she was still alive in 2015 for his service to Anglo-German relations.
Oh, and based on Ronnie's background right now, I'd like to give a shout out to Russell Cass for shooting down the Chinese balloon, just like he did that alien spaceship 20 some years ago.
he came back from the dead to shoot down a Chinese balloon.
In the words of my generation, up yours.
Up yours.
So he said that all his time shooting Independence Day prepared him for this very day.
Mm-hmm.
Release the hound.
No, I don't know, man. I see this war in Europe continuing to escalate. I see us committing our own troops to the fight, and when we're fully committed in Europe, Eastern Europe, China's going to start fucking around in Southeast Asia.
Aren't they already doing that? Aren't they flying sorties in Taiwan airspace all the time?
Yeah, but I mean real shit, not their harassing sorties and stuff that they've been doing.
I'm sure you guys have noticed the burgeoning totalitarian dictatorship in Canada right now, that it's getting a lot worse quickly.
Oh yeah, they've started implementing those 15-minute cities there in Canada.
Yeah, and you remember the pistol ban he just put through? Well, now they just put through a hunting rifle ban too. They're going to take all their hunting rifles now too.
Yeah, maybe we need to. Maybe we need to
Well, you know,
go north and liberate Canada.
well, no, because look, it's kind of funny because Canada, it used to be called the Confederation, was actually inspired in large part, for example, by Judah Benjamin, who is the first and I guess only Attorney General of the Confederacy. After the Civil War, he went, I believe, to England, sat at the Temple Bar, which basically he became a barrister in England, and then he also helped apparently influence the Constitution or the legal documents of modern Canada. So, for example, and I know we're this now since you brought up Alberta and we're talking about dictators. Here's the thing: a Canadian province can actually secede with ease. All they need is a majority vote. That's it. I mean, and technically, so can American states. It's only a stupid ass Supreme Court ruling that technically prevents it, but Supreme Court changes its mind all the time. But in Canada, all they have to do is 50% plus one need to say adios, Canada, adieu,
Mm-hmm.
au revoir, and kick it off. So Alberta, there's a very strong secession movement in Alberta called Wexit, which means Western exit, because the Westerners have felt highly abused by moochers and leechers in the East for decades. I mean, it's nothing new. So that's the thing. It's like, because this was also, kind of, here's an aspect of the First World War that was talked about a lot, especially at Versailles, was national determination. People determining for their lives the countries in which they would dwell. And, Woodrow Wilson was very big on this. And so I think that's kind of an echo from World War One that we should be embracing today, is this whole idea of national determination instead of, I mean, of course, it's a little ironic because at World War One at Versailles, they literally drew a map of what Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, but which causes problems to this day.
Yep.
Ooh, did I mention that China is rip roaring mad that we shot down their balloon, and that
It's probably all just for
that they're
it's just all
threatening
for show.
they're threatening retaliation?
Like, that's the thing. That's the thing. Russia is not a threat. They couldn't, all these people are like, "Oh, Russia." China's the threat, because they have a diversified economy, whereas Russia doesn't. I mean, they have oil. That's it, or they have natural gas. That's it.
Yeah, but I think this day and age, I think Russia has the force to probably take out a good part of Europe if they chose to do it.
Well, they can't. I mean, again, unless they're just being coy, because obviously we don't know what's going on the ground there. I trust no media. Thanks to the year 2016 and above, I trust no media now. So you can't trust anything that's coming out of there. So they're either bogged down,
but
or they're just
Russia,
being coy. I don't know which.
the equipment they've been using in Ukraine has been their shit from the 1960s. They haven't used their modern equipment. None of it. They haven't used their tanks, their APCs. They haven't used anything modern in there. They've been using all of their shit left over from the Cold War.
Yeah, and they got thousands of tanks and BMPs and you fucking name it from back in the Soviet days, all sitting in mothball, just waiting to come out.
Yeah, that's the one thing. That's the one thing that Russia has thousands of more than we do is fucking tanks. They've got a lot of tanks, a lot of armor.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, the whole Ukraine thing. I mean, look, because this all goes back. I mean, again, national determination. So it's historical fact that Western countries, especially NATO in the 90s, promised the then Soviets that we would not expand along their borders. And this has been attested to. It is a historical fact. No one can dispute that. And you know what? For a couple years, they respected it. NATO didn't expand at all. And from the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 until about, I want to say it was 96 or 97, when inextricably, while Russia's still in a piss poor state of, disrepair and disrepute, that NATO adds I believe it was 3 countries immediately. I believe it was Poland was the big one. I'm trying to see when that was. Okay, so that was 1999 when Poland, Hungary, and the then Czech Republic became NATO members.
Yeah.
So the fact was they kept expanding and expanding and expanding. And this was the case.
Didn't we
Here's the thing.
Didn't we violate that treaty like 20 times or so, something like that?
Well, again, because it was always seen as a provocation. Even Joe Biden, there's video of him from like I believe it's 97 or 98 admitting that NATO expansion was a problem. So it was and I'll try to find it, but the fact is,
The U.S.
everybody
government has never really had if you really think about it, the U.S. government has never really had a problem with violating treaties and agreements they make. So
Nope, they violate the Constitution every day. So why not?
here it was. So
everybody else.
This came out a few weeks after the war in Ukraine started. Yeah, it was in 1997. Joe Biden admitted that adding Baltic states like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, which has substantial Russian populations, by the way, could result in hostility from Russia. Now, apparently, he said that didn't mean military retaliation, but the fact was, a broken clock is right, twice a day, blah, blah, blah. So he was right about that.
Yeah, and Biden wasn't quite as senile back then as he is now.
No, so notorious. And here's what he said. I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission to NATO, having nothing to do with the merit and preparedness of the country to come in, would be to admit Baltic states now in terms of NATO-Russian, US-Russian relations. If there was ever anything that was going to tip the balance, were it to be tipped, in terms of a vigorous and hostile reaction in Russia, I don't mean military, it would be that. So there he is. He was right. He's absolutely right. And see, this was the period of time where NATO should have, extended a hand. It should have, picked up Russia, dusted it off, brushed it off, patted it on the back, and incorporated it into the European society. Instead, they're determined to isolate them, anger them, kick them while they're down. And so by 2008, when you have the Russia-Georgia war, which, by the way, lasted only for 5 days or so, I believe it was less than a week. Because again, that was a matter of NATO expansionism in part. They were already on their way to standing up on their own 2 legs again.
Yeah, and yet again, that was another situation where you saw refugees flooding into other countries from Georgia, and you go and look, and it's all military-age males. Like, where are your women and your children? Oh, they're still in Georgia. Why aren't you at home defending your country? And where are your women?
Yep, just like
exactly.
The Syrians a few years ago. The Syrian refugees flooding into Europe across the Mediterranean.
Military-age males.
Yep.
See, and that's the thing. No, and that's the thing. I mean, no, look, a lot of cowardly men who want other people to do their fighting for them. And by the way, for anyone listening,
fucked up is they abandon their women and their children there.
Yeah, of course, because a lot of these guys were probably sitting on their porches smoking cigarettes in the days leading up to that war, and they were reading, 1990s American magazines, and then they bitched out when the time came. So yeah, but without Western intervention and flooding Georgia with tens of billions and trillions of dollars and in equipment and funds, the war was over in less than a week. And that's what would have happened in Ukraine too, had we not fucking propped it up. So I hold that our countries are actually responsible for tens of thousands of Ukrainian deaths because we fucking stepped into it. This would have been over in like 2 weeks, probably a month. And so many people would be alive today. But that's besides the point. So Putin again warned them. He issued an ultimatum. They won't, his troops amassing on the Ukrainian border won't go home until he had concrete agreements prohibiting any further eastward expansion of NATO. I mean, that's the thing. Like after Russia collapsed, NATO should have been abolished. I mean, they had the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was abolished. That didn't exist anymore. So it's like, what the
Right.
hell was NATO? What the hell was NATO still doing?
Yep.
Like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
NATO's entire function was to counter the Soviets.
and they were gone.
Yep.
So they
There is
start
there
adding
is no more Soviet Union. So there
like
should be no more NATO.
it's like someone walking around today in in like armor from the Crusades, threatening to wage war against the Ottoman Empire. That doesn't exist anymore. Like, take off your outfit. So,
Yep.
but yeah, so the fact is they started expanding in the 90s while Russia was still down. And look, I don't like Putin. He's a thug. He's a killer. But I mean, Zelensky's no saint either. Before, that's the crazy thing. Before,
They got the helicopter up. You guys hear it?
Hey, the Ottomans were another country, another empire that had its last hurrah in World War One. That
yeah,
was
that's
the
the
end.
crazy. Well, that's the crazy thing about World War One, man. Like, so many empires died in 1918 or shortly thereafter. The German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman. I mean, it was the death of major empires. I mean, the Russian Empire.
Yep.
That's wild to me. I mean, that's what's so like eerie for me about World War One is that it was like
They
this
marched to
flash.
war straight to their collapse and their demise.
So, and that's the thing. It was their arrogance and their paranoia which led to their own destruction. I mean, because you read about the military buildup before the First World War, especially in terms of submarines and U-boats,
Dreadnoughts.
dreadnoughts, which of course the British were, the lords of the sea.
Well, I don't know. I think the difference, especially with us between then and now, is back then, like the U.S., we sat it out for most of it. Like we didn't join till later on in the war, and that goes for both world wars.
Well, the British to that point, to the point of World War One, were the lords of the seas for coming up on 200 years at that point, right?
But what I'm getting at is this time around, we're the ones that are fucking starting it.
Yeah, because we own NATO. I mean, yeah, there's multiple countries in it, but we own NATO, so it's
We
not
own
like
the UN. If we left the UN tomorrow, the UN doesn't have an army to speak of. Same with NATO.
Yep, pretty much. We fund the UN and NATO. We are the muscle of the UN and NATO.
And the other countries involved in those organizations and those treaties don't pull their weight or put their fair share into it. We foot the entire bill.
Yep.
I think it's high time we trim the fat.
I would tend to agree with you, Ronnie. I would tend to agree.
Yeah. Old Donald J. Trump agreed with you too. As he was ready to pull us out of NATO. He said, fuck you guys.
Yeah, I don't see any logical reason for us to be fighting another fucking war. At all.
well, it's not, but like I say, Jesse Kelly, guy I like listening to, former Marine, he was pointing out that it wasn't too long after our chaotic pullout of Afghanistan, thus ending the gravy train of the endless Afghan war. Which, I mean, look, I'm not per se against it, but how it happened was horrible and wrong. But no, so and it's barely it's barely six months later. So on September, October, November, December. Yeah, 6 months later, August to February, where we're in another global, there's another potential global endless war now. I mean, it wasn't even 6 months. It was barely 6 months until
I'm kind of the same opinion, with respect to Afghanistan. Yes, I believe we should have we needed to pull out of there. We accomplished everything we were going to accomplish, which is pretty much nothing. It was time to go. But the way they did it was a disgusting tactical abortion.
Well, yeah, and the whole point is it's like they lost their gravy train too. So 6 months later, now this whole Ukraine thing kicks off, which seems suspect to me at best.
Yeah, now you got a
So
military, which is a dog that's been off its leash for so long, and now you got to put it back on its leash. And the military-industrial complex
Yeah,
needs someone else to fight. They are pulling at that leash for all their might.
and I don't know if you've heard, but Putin's in talks right now with the Taliban to buy all that military equipment we left behind when we fucking bailed out of Afghanistan.
Well, hopefully we didn't leave anything too classified in that equipment, but
Oh, I'm sure we had a couple helicopters over there that we left.
Apaches.
Blackhawks mostly, I think, and I think maybe a Little Bird.
All right. Yeah, I would hope we didn't leave Apaches or anything there, but I mean, who the fuck knows?
Yep. And then
We left artillery, everything, M109s, all kinds of shit we left there.
I know we left some armored vehicles too. I think we left a couple Bradleys over there.
If we were gonna leave it, we should have bombed that fucking tarmac where we left it and fucking bombed it all out of existence when we left. We shouldn't have left it there.
Well, the Chinese
Operational.
came in and had that shit fixed in a couple of weeks. So what would be the point of that?
Not if it's a pile of molten metal on the fucking tarmac. You're fixing that.
I thought you said pound the fucking tarmac so they can't get a plane in there.
No, pound all the equipment we left when we pulled out. We should have bombed the fuck out of it and destroyed it.
Yep.
We didn't want to bring it with us.
Well, normally that's what you would do. And there's friggin' videos all over the place, all over the internet of when we pulled out of Iraq the first time. Them fucking dumping Humvees in the fucking middle of the ocean and shit. Because it's just cheaper to get rid of it that way than to bring it back.
We did that. Didn't we do that to some extent during the Normandy invasion? Because I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the English Channel that you go down there and there's fucking like Bradleys all over the fucking ocean floor where they dumped them off the fucking transports.
Well, not Bradleys, because we didn't have Bradleys and
Not Bradleys, Shermans, sorry.
Shermans. Yeah, probably. Makes sense. Because Shermans were a dime a dozen. They were fucking cheap. And we built them quickly.
yeah, so here's kind of about the military expansion role, kind of bringing it back a little bit. So, because obviously a lot of people are drawing parallels of pre-World War I to our current stage, which again, I think it's okay to draw parallels because, I think by the end of this conversation, I want to talk about the fourth turning, which I really think is one of the most important theory, social and political theories really in recent years. But so it's talking about the arms race. So, for example, between 1900 and 1914, military expenditures absolutely skyrocketed. In 1870, the major powers of Europe, Britain, France, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Russia, and Italy, spent 94 million pounds on military expenditures. They didn't adjust that for inflation or US dollars, but you can imagine 94 million was a lot, and pounds was a lot in 1870. By 1914, it quadrupled to 398 million pounds. So the fact is the military was expanding rapidly. Like in Germany, for example, they constructed 17 new vessels. By 1914, Germany had 29 operational U-boats. And it was this behavior that, I mean, obviously Britain was doing kind of the same because Great Britain actually led Europe in terms of military expenditures. Germany was second, which isn't surprising. So the press like freaked out about Germany's U-boats. So what did that do? That triggered the British government, for example, to commission 29 new ships for the Royal Navy. This is again by 1914. So you just had this rapid militarization and expenditures, which, you're seeing that in China, certainly. they're obviously investing a lot of greenbacks into building their fleet, especially aircraft carriers. They're trying to perfect that. So, and obviously, what also worse than things, the parallel we're also seeing, obviously, is the rapid advance in technology. Obviously, Europe went through 2 industrial revolutions before the First World War. And so the level of technology brought to bear horrors that Europe just couldn't possibly fathom.
Well,
I
and
mean,
as for China, expanding with their carriers, I mean, it also, if they wanted any shot, if it was in their plans to try to invade, like, say, the U.S., they'd have to vastly expand their sea lift capabilities to move the amount of men and material they'll need just to establish a beachhead, because they don't have it.
yeah, I mean, that would require god awful amounts of shipping. So that's the one safety net, I guess, right now. Which their big thing would probably just be to secure all of Asia first, kind of like what the Japanese did, and consolidate there first, I would imagine.
Well, I think they would need to take a place closer to us, like maybe Hawaii, before they try to attack the mainland.
Well,
Like
yeah, of course they go for
they would,
Hawaii,
they would,
Guam, Hawaii. Yeah.
well, they would have to.
Well, I know because it's no different than our island hopping in the Pacific War. I mean, we took island after island so we could establish beachheads for the eventual attack on the Japanese mainland. So yeah, you're right.
Well, if we did end up at war with China, Guam's hanging out there with their fucking ass in the friggin' breeze. Our base on Guam will be leveled
Yeah,
in both opening salvos.
Guam will take a nuke.
Guam
Most
will
likely.
be leveled
Why would
in
I?
Guam will be leveled in the opening hours of the war if it happens.
I don't think China's gonna nuke. They want all those buildings and those resources again. Like I know communist Chinese are like suicidal. They're terrible with their own health and their ecosystems, but you're not gonna fucking, what is it? Eat where you shit or whatever.
Well, communists in general don't typically think with any kind of logic. It's all emotional for them. So,
So they're like a bunch
Well,
of women.
I think even a communist knows you can't fucking, occupy an entirely irradiated country.
well, talk to any modern U.S. college student. Well, commies, and they'll tell you. They'll show you
Yeah,
just
I
how
guess, but
evil they can be.
Yes, so they're basically they're like a bunch of women. They think on and act on emotion and nothing else.
Exactly.
Not a logical
so here,
thought enters the brain.
so help me out. You guys are probably good on like some of the modern armament. So they were detailing that during the American Civil War, heavy artillery could fire up to 1.5 miles at best. By the early 1900s, this range had almost tripled. So again, now what are we talking about in terms of range?
Yeah, that's Ronnie's department.
Well, I know that our 155 millimeter howitzers with a rocket assisted projectile can reach out about 30 kilometers.
Royal
So,
hell. No.
18, 19 miles, somewhere in there.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously, again, they
What do our
ex-
rockets do? Like our MLRS systems, like what kind of range do those have?
They're probably about the same, about 30.
I thought it was a little farther for them.
Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know anything about those.
But it's technically considered artillery, right? Those
Yes.
rocket artillery pods or whatever they call them.
Yeah, they're considered artillery. They fall under the realm of artillery.
Yeah. I thought they had a range somewhere around like 50 or 60 miles. Cuz like, Russia has something similar. And they were shooting theirs from they weren't even in Ukraine. They were a couple miles back over the border and they were hitting targets well into Ukraine with theirs. So I'm pretty sure ours can reach distances like that too. Plus they
Maybe.
call ours steel rain. So
Yeah.
Yep.
We
Steel.
make it rain on them hoes. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Oh,
Ben?
yeah. Benjamin?
He muted himself. Probably had to go take a piss or something. All right. What do you see happening here in the next few months, Ronnie? You see this war expanding and escalating?
Probably. I
Well,
think
that's what they're.
What?
No, go ahead. I cut in. I'll cut
I
in
was
after
just
you.
going to say, I think that at the very least, tensions are going to escalate in the coming months.
Unless something
Like, look, even
happens.
Biden, who's a senile adult, even he, like I say, a broken clock can be right twice a day. So back in March 2022, he rightfully noted that sending tanks to Ukraine is essentially meaning World War III. But now this jackass and his handlers, and let's be honest, he's being handled. He's not. He's a human sock puppet. Now they're wanting to send tanks to Ukraine. Now so it's like, okay, you just said, maybe you forgot because you're senile, which is you're either senile or you're incompetent or you're intentionally malicious. Either way. But it's like, thankfully, some countries are actually stepping up and saying, no, we've got to stop this.
I think
It's like,
I think Biden's intentionally trying to get us all killed.
No, this is absolutely intentional, and I'm telling you right now that
oh, I agree. Generally, overall
the
speaking,
U.S. government, the government right now is desperate to get us at work. I mean, you think about where we're at right now as far as, we're in 2023. Next year's an election year, and they desperately need a distraction from this administration's abysmal record at this point. They need a distraction bad.
Yeah, and not only that, but the totally impeachment-worthy crimes and scandals that are coming out about the entire Biden family. So,
yeah, and they have no qualms with sending Americans to die to distract the public from the president's wrongdoings and misdealings. So,
yeah, that's coming.
yeah, no, look, and yeah, generally speaking, I think all this is intentional because, I mean, it was even on the World Economics Forum social media sites, for God's sakes, where they're like, by 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So it's like, how do you accomplish that? Well, you accomplish that when you have nothing but a decimated slave population,
Well, yeah.
decimated. So yeah, no, the powers that be want a nuclear holocaust because that will lead to their own nothing and be happy society.
Yeah, because it will destroy everything we own.
yeah, I just
Like
don't get why you'd want to destroy the whole world and then rule over the ashes, because there ain't going to be much left. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, because
yeah,
all these bigwigs and big shots will be hiding in their fucking bunkers.
Yeah, and
The rest of
all
us
their
are gonna have
money,
to deal with it.
their money is worth nothing.
I mean, and maybe common sense somehow magically will prevail. But again, to me, and this is where, history meets spirituality. I think a lot of these people are just absolutely demon possessed because of all the shit that they do and that they believe and that what they're doing now is just, for me, evidence enough that like something is very wrong here. And it's not just chemical imbalance in their oversized egos. Like I learned these people probably do commune with the devil and, with spirit
Right.
cooking and everything else.
And
So
I guess it is partially a good thing with, where we live and the country we live in, because at least for America, I mean, to some level, any war they want to go to, they got to get the public behind it. The public has to support the war. It's not going to work. They're not going
well,
to
again,
die
that's
to go to a war they don't support. This is a free country. They can't make them go. And even if they instituted the draft, if everybody just laid down and said, no, fuck you, we ain't going, what are they going to do? Kill everyone? No.
well, look, I mean, I think that's where I have a fear personally of false flag attacks, against like certain, because how do you motivate a population is by attacking that population getting under attack. So, and I mean, false flags are just historical facts. I mean, I know that term might be overused sometimes, like you saw how Alex Jones even horrifyingly used it in Sandy Hook, for example. And I like a lot of what he says, but he just fucking flew the coop on that one. It's like, go ahead and say the government did it, whatever. But to say that a bunch of kids are alive today when parents know they're not, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So,
What
like,
was
I
it
know that,
called, Andy? That we did the episode on it. Was it Operation Northwoods? That was the
Yeah.
false flag one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it never jumped off. It was something that was proposed, but it never.
Well, right. It solidifies the point that the powers that be have no problem with
I mean,
attacking their own
yeah,
citizens to a means to an end.
Yeah. So those who don't know,
So,
Operation Northwoods was a proposal that was brought forth to President Kennedy to stage an attack on the naval base at Guantanamo Bay and blame it on the Cubans to justify an invasion of Cuba.
yeah, like, I mean, this stuff's just part of the historical record, and it's just not an American thing. Like, you go back to what's his face, the one who's Nero, the Roman emperor who burned Rome and then blamed the Christians for it.
Yep.
I mean, so he could justify persecution of them and massacres and everything.
You had
I
Hitler,
mean,
you had Hitler with the Reichstag fire.
yeah,
You
exactly.
had
That's the biggest.
you had the USS Maine. Was
Yeah,
that
which
Spanish?
probably was not an attack, but they did use an accidental explosion to justify a war.
Yeah. And
yeah, wasn't Nero the emperor that lured all the Christians into the chariot racing facility, the hippodrome or whatever it is, and then slaughtered them?
I mean, he definitely massacred a lot of Christians based off of the fault, his either he caused the burning of Rome or, he just exploited a fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, according, like, for example, the Roman historian Tacitus, just to show how stable Nero was, Nero had Christians covered in wild beast skins and torn apart to death by wild dogs. So, but I mean, the whole point was that this is a long-term historical thing that has happened time and time again.
Yeah.
And some people even say that
false flag
some
operations are normal recourse for governments. It's normal.
because
It's
power,
normal shit that governments do.
and that's what I think is another lesson here. It's not just a parallel to World War I or World War II. It's just a parallel throughout history. Is that centralization of power leads to great world violence. I mean, I've never heard of it. You don't hear about Switzerland waging war on people. Why? Because it's a small, decentralized country. They keep their shit to themselves.
Yeah, but
whereas countries that are constantly centralizing are seeking more domination and power. And what are they doing? They're the ones causing wars.
Then on the other hand, though, complete decentralization leads to situations like you have in Africa. Constant tribal warfare, small groups of people fighting with each other.
Well, but at the end of the day, I mean, local government is more preferable because that's where you have greater control. Like, the problem is we have such a yawning chasm between the elites in DC and normal human beings. Like, look, if your average congressman has 500,000 constituents, you think they have meaningful engagement with 500,000 people? No.
No, I think that
whereas your town and city councilor maybe deal with 20 people a week. I mean, obviously large cities have, big populations, but like an average town in Maine with a small town council, they're dealing with a small number of people. That gap in the power structure is very narrow. Like, you can literally walk down the street in some towns to bitch and moan to your town councilor. So, Like, yeah, I'm not like a complete decentralizer, but at the end of the day, we should mostly be like, I believe we should have 1,000 states or more, like 10,000 Liechtensteins, each with their like, because again, then all those little Liechtensteins can just trade with each other.
Yep.
if they wanted to.
If they wanted to, exactly. You don't have to.
More than likely, these 10,000 Liechtensteins would constantly be warring with each other because that's just what people do.
Oh, well, that's human nature, I guess. But it's been that way since the dawn of time. I mean, Cain killed Abel, and that was, millennia ago. So people are always, but I'd say it's better for 10,000 Liechtensteins to be at war with each other for minor shit than one centralized superpower against another centralized superpower, committing nuclear holocaust.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the tribes in the Amazon that had nothing to do with anything and don't even know what's going on and will be destroyed by a nuclear holocaust.
Yep. And I say that Ukraine is absolutely not worth a nuclear holocaust. And again, thankfully, some countries are waking up to that, especially those who are close to the action, like Hungary, Austria, Croatia. Some of them are starting to say, you know what, this needs to wind down now.
Well, like the German parliament is talking tough, like they're going to do this, that, and the other, but the German people are fucking totally against it. The German people are protesting right now.
Good, because they firsthand saw what happens with unchecked militarism. It leads to the deaths of tens of millions of human beings.
I mean, the Germans have arguably probably the most powerful tank in the world that they're sending to Ukraine for whatever fucking reason. Why would you send your fucking most powerful tank?
And they weren't even going to do it at first, but somehow they got browbeat, probably by
Biden?
no surprise, by America. So we probably threatened that we'd pull out of Rammstein or something.
Yeah. So
yeah, I guarantee we threaten them.
So you said you kind of want to get into the fourth turning, huh? Right.
Well, because I mean, we can kind of touch on it briefly. I mean, I think a lot of it might help people understand like what's going on, because most of your average people out there don't really maybe have a clue about why things are happening, the way they are. So let me just pull that up. But what's your while I do that, what's your assessment of everything since you asked us?
Well, like right now, like the fourth turning thing is the idea that these things happen in cycles.
Well, no, I mean just about where things are going in the next, maybe even in this year.
I think before the end of this year, we'll be fully engaged in Eastern Europe.
Okay.
Probably even before that. We'll definitely be fully engaged though. And I think that that's going to embolden China to start acting up in Southeast Asia. And probably North Korea might feel ballsy enough to do something with the South. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, on that point,
people have to realize that over the last, pretty much since World War II, the only thing keeping a lot of these countries in line is us. And now that we're thoroughly weakened by Biden and only capable of fighting a war on one front when we're supposed to be capable of fighting one on two fronts, we have to commit our forces somewhere. So we're either going to commit them to Asia or we're going to commit them to Eastern Europe.
Right.
But whichever way we choose, the other way is going to go to hell.
One way or another, we're probably going to end up in war in the next year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and at that point, I would encourage people to oppose a draft if it came up. Like I think one of the good things about these past few years is that half the population, meaning conservative population, has been thoroughly disgusted by government and even the military. Like the military, with all its woke bullshit, has lost a tremendous amount of support that it used to have among conservative Americans. So I've heard of, I mean, it's only anecdotal, but I've seen a lot of discussions of people about like, I served, but I wouldn't have my boy serve now. I've seen a lot of those comments online, and I don't know if you guys are seeing that
Well,
sort of commentary.
the military now, and I've actually had this confirmed earlier on a Zoom meeting, with some friends of mine that I served with, that the military's gone woke. Like it's one big social experiment now.
And to be fair, that's been happening since the 90s. Like,
but immediately from right when you start from basic training, like right when you get off the bus, it starts with the woke bullshit. And it's making our soldiers soft. And honestly, I don't think like looking at, you look at like how the Russians train, you look at how the Chinese train, and even the North Koreans, as inept as they are, they still train. They train their people to be tough. Our people are training now to be sensitive, and
You're training to go to war. You're not training to go play patty cakes.
no,
It's not.
that's exactly what I'm saying, Ronnie. They're training our fucking They're training our boys to be fucking emotionally sensitive and watch what their fucking pronouns are. Like, how does that have any bearing on how you fight a war?
well, it's not, but the whole point was to weaken it from within. So like, with the whole COVID thing, and obviously now they're backing away from the jabs.
Like, and
But like
I think whether we're right or wrong in this scenario that's coming, which I'm pretty sure we're in the wrong right now, I don't think we have the capability to win this fight.
No, and what I would say is like I'm perfectly fine. Well, because in the past few years they've done their damnedest to like exile conservatives from the military. So what that tells me is when they send the force overseas eventually, it's mostly going to be lefties who are in the ranks, and thus lefties who are going to get wiped out. So you tell me if that's actually a loss for us.
Well, I don't know, man, but I think honestly, anybody who had the balls to sign up deserves our respect. But
well, it's mostly lefties that took the kung flu jab too. So, I mean, if that's everything I've heard it to be in the conspiracy circles, then that's going to wipe them out too. So,
but what I'm saying is with people in command like Millie and these woke pricks, I don't think we have the ability to defeat our enemies anymore.
No, of course we don't. Of course we don't.
not a real, industrialized nation enemy.
You know what I'm talking about, Ronnie? I'm talking Russia and China. Those
oh
are
my God, Eddie.
Those are our enemies today.
That's what I'm talking about. Holy shit. Yes, I just said we don't have the ability to beat an industrialized nation enemy. A real enemy, a rival. Good Lord. Do you even listen before you dispute?
I'm not disputing anything. All I said
totally agreed with you, and you said no.
You didn't agree.
Yeah, let's do a little active listening here. So
we'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live.
Hey,
so
Ron,
here's
hold up.
This guy's kind of.
Hey, Ronnie, I got one thing to say to you, Ronnie.
You are gay.
Oh my God. Yeah, that wouldn't fly in today's military. They'd bounce you out faster than a homo at Fort Dix.
Well, and that's what I've kind of gotten at too, with like, states just starting to get bold again, and like basically at some point they're just gonna have to like reject DC. Like even if we stay in this abusive relationship, like Florida, for example, should just be a semi-autonomous republic, and thus, the Florida National Guard should obviously be on standby to protect, the red state governors should be prepared to sort of agree to defend the homeland once things go bad overseas.
Well, I'm not,
Because they're
more red state governors need to grow a backbone like DeSantis. Be a
I'm
little
not,
more
I'm not sure about
outspoken.
this, but is there a way that the state governors can block the feds from federalizing the National Guards, the state National Guards?
I mean, I'm not sure per se. I'm not like, I know there's like right now, because that was the whole thing with like the COVID jab, for example. Like, for example, the governor of Oklahoma said that he wasn't going to mandate it for his troops. Because, you know, he is the, you know, the governor of the state is the commander in chief of the National Guard of that state, unless they're federalized. And what is it, Title 10? Yeah, I think it's Title 10. So, and I'm not sure if like there has to be certain prerequisites to authorize Title 10 or if he can just do it at a snap of the finger. I don't know how that works.
Well, what if the state decided to fund a civilian militia? That civilian militia couldn't be federalized, right?
Well, and that's what a number of states that's what a number of states have. They have state guards. Like when DeSantis said he was going to do this last year, all these leftists naturally started suffering, you know, aneurysms and ripping their shirts. It's like DeSantis is starting his own death squad. And it's like, you motherfucker, like you motherfuckers, even California,
and gnashing of the teeth.
even California has a state guard, you stupid fucks.
Yeah, not to mention even California has several large and well-armed civilian militia units as well. I mean,
Yeah,
we're talking units. We're talking units in the tens of thousands of members.
And they also have the California State Guard. They're one of the states that has a state guard.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, at least half of states. So when like these low IQ, low T idiots started, you know, just started ripping their hair out, it's like, open a fucking book or a Wikipedia article first. Like, just shut up. So yeah, so I think that would probably be an ideal thing, is for them to focus more time and energy on funding those state guards, because at some point we're going to need a patchwork of a real conservative governors to protect the homeland when things go south.
Yep.
So that's going to be a natural response. But again, this goes back to the revolution. Like, you know, like think of the Lexington alarm. Like it was men coming out of their farmhouses and, you know, blacksmith shops to like peg the British with you know, you know, little lead balls for like what, 10 or 20 miles on the road to Concord. I mean, that's what they were doing. They were the local militia of their community responding to that emergency. So, yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So, so you got anything on the fourth turning angle?
Well, yeah, I just did, but then we, of course, went into that whole tangent. So then hold on, because I had someone providing a very good basic explanation that even us lowbrow people can understand.
Shit, my brow is so big, it's almost like having a visor.
Does he explain it in a way that even a lefty could understand it?
I don't know, that'd be pretty tough.
So here we go from Lou Rockwell, which is a great libertarian site. And this was 2018. So he's obviously, the Ukraine crisis had been ongoing for 4 years. I don't know if they're because the fourth turning, the theory itself, was introduced in 1997 by these, I guess they're like social scientists, Strauss and Howe. So let's see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, here's how they describe it. Don't think you can escape the fourth turning the way you might today distance yourself from news, national politics, or taxes. History warns that a crisis will reshape the basic social and economic environment that you now take for granted. The fourth turning necessitates the death and rebirth of the social order, which is what do you think these fuckers at the WEF are trying to do? It is the ultimate rite of passage for an entire people. requiring a luminal state of sheer chaos, whose nature and duration no one can predict in advance. So that's what the essential nature of a fourth turning is.
So that's the New World Order coming in.
So, for example, there's a group of people called Gray Champions who arise to meet challenges during crisis periods in history. A Gray Champion can be a good guy. A Gray Champion can actually be a bad guy, or it can be kind of a morally neutral person. So, for example, like George Washington was a Gray Champion during the Revolution. Abraham Lincoln technically was a Gray Champion during the American Civil War.
Yep.
Yeah, they're saying, yeah, during the Civil War, Jefferson Davis, and yeah, there's these whole, like, you know, these are social scientists and professors who came up with this shit. So they have a whole category of people, like, for example, transcendental prophets, and then you had Gray Champions. These were men, and here's where it's talking about chaos, because think of the chaos of the last few years, especially with Antifa literally burning shit down to get their point across. So here's what like Gray Champions will do, and this isn't why they're necessarily good men. These are men who would do anything to further their cause, from ordering thousands of men to their deaths on Cemetery Ridge, to burning down cities, to suspending the writ of habeas corpus, and seceding from the Union. They were destined to brandish their terrible swift swords in achieving total, indisputable victory, but we only know one side could win. And then it jumps to World War II, which of course was another kind of major social evolution. FDR was the Gray Champion who, you know, and for example, the New Deal, he took drastic measures and sent 16 million young men into battle on a scale never before seen. Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill were also defined as these kind of, and these are like major world leaders who have epochal world-changing impacts. Like some mayor of a town isn't really going to qualify for this. These are just people of absolute, you know, greatness, whether it's good greatness or bad greatness. So I'm trying to. So now they're talking about. Here we go. Two powerful dictators, and you know, again, this is Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, and this is 2018. We're talking about. Were identified as they're being identified as what's called the prophet generation leaders, who are ruthless, unyielding, shrewd, and most important, strident nationalists. That is true. They actually care about their countries. Xi may be a son of a bitch, but he does believe in putting China first. Yeah, they rule their countries with an iron fist, do not blink when faced with challenges from other nations. So I'm trying to give people a basic definition here, though, because there's great explanations about like the actual characters of our current age. But that's, I guess I did kind of provide a basic explanation. It's major shifts, typically between an 80 to 100 year period.
Yeah.
Basically the normal lifespan of you know, an elderly human being. And typically in 20-year periods, you see, you know, these sort of chaoses. Here we go. This is breaking it down very simple. This is from supersummary.com. So yeah, William Strauss, Neil Howe, just to give credit. Yeah. So they discovered in history that there exists a period called a saeculum. That's a Latin word, or 80 to 100 year period. There are 4 dramatic shifts in the mood of the nation, with each lasting roughly 20 years. Now that's interesting. The mood of the nation. These 4 turnings of the saeculum include a high mark by an upbeat mood, conformity, trust in institutions. There's an awakening marked by increased spirituality and rebellion, an unraveling in which institutions become distrusted and individualism is strong, and a crisis in which revolution of some type occurs and the old order is destroyed. So that's very interesting to me because I know we've talked about this in the past. You can kind of see that last period. Like think about, so it's about 80 to 100 years. So look at the history of America. From the end of the revolution to the beginning of the Civil War, that was about 80 years, 80 plus years.
Yep.
From the end of the Civil War to World War II, that was 80 years. With give or take some years, but it was after 80 years. Now we are 80 years from the end of World War II. So we're in that time zone of the 80-year mark. And you look at that last part called the unraveling and what's been happening in America, it's been a real unraveling, literally, with like we don't trust institutions.
Every aspect as well, though, too. I mean, it's not just our institutional distrust, because Americans have always distrusted institutions, especially of government. But our entire financial system is unraveling right down to our very currency. And everything's at stake now.
Yeah, what's interesting again is, and I'm trying to find more on the crisis period because we have been witnessing a revolution. I mean, look at like the revolution, for example, in our social institutions, which have just been weaponized against weaponized against the country itself.
Yeah, a communist revolution.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're did you see the bill that they just voted in Congress? I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically a bill blocking socialism in our government institutions. Like it was supposed to block that. Obviously it got 100% Republican support, and some Democrats voted for it, but the number that voted against it tells you everything you need to know.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, there were some pretty shocking votes. Like the vast majority of Democrats refused to condemn attacks on pro-life centers with all this abortion activism in the wake of Roe versus Wade overturned. And this is just, they're called, it's churches and what you call pro-life pregnancy centers have been firebombed, attacked. I mean, just openly attacked, and virtually all Democrats, except for maybe one or two, voted to actually condemn that behavior.
Well, that's because killing babies is a holy sacrament for them.
Well, it really is.
Yeah, they're a death cult these days.
It's all part of the COVID cult and the kill your babies cult. It's all one and the same.
They're a lefty death cult.
Yep.
They worship death.
So listen to this. Kind of put a little more meat on the bone. I found an article, and I don't know what this site's disposition is, but I think it helps discover it. So let's talk about the unraveling. Actually, no, this is perfect because this is our most recent saculum. The high, this is what we were talking about, that first 20 years. The first turning was the American high of the Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy presidencies. And that's true because at that period of time, you had high trust in social institutions. The FBI were good guys, where everything's good, trust your government. The awakening, the second turning was during the mid 1960s. And they even, the campus revolt, which, are characteristically leftist, but they even brought in the tax revolt to the early 1980s, and that's primarily libertarian and conservative. So they're being a little generous here and comparing it to both sides. Then you get the unraveling, where we have the distrust in social institutions and the breakdown in harmony. So the third turning was the culture wars of the 1980s to the mid 2000s, which is absolutely true. I mean, obviously, Roe versus Wade was in 1973, just to give an example, but you really didn't have heated abortion wars, for example, start up until like the 1980s. And then crisis. So in 1997, these two sociologists or whatever their profession was stated that the crisis period would begin in 2005. And since that cycle lasts about 20 years, the end of that would be 2025, which obviously is just a few years away. And again, to describe a crisis, again, that's a decisive era of upheaval when the values regime propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. So, and here's let me just quote those authors again, but this is a different quote. Sometime before the year 2025, America will pass through a great gate in history, commensurate with what I say: American Revolution, Civil War, twin emergencies of the Great Depression, and World War II. The risk of catastrophe will be very high. The nation could erupt into insurrection or civil violence, crack up geographically, or succumb to authoritarian rule. They said that in 1997. Now, do you think all that shit's happening? Yes. Because think of the unity we had immediately in the wake of World War II, right? Unprecedented. Like, probably, I mean, obviously you had disagreements, pretty severe disagreements in the 1950s and 60s on segregation. But, overall, the country was pretty strongly unified. You can't say that today. Not even damn close.
Yes, sir.
So that's what I think that everybody needs to know, that theory about like why we're also seeing what we're seeing, because of course, the end of World War II saw us as a superpower bringing harmony, kind of a Pax Americana, so to speak. And now the empire is falling apart, and so the world with it.
I think if the U.S. falls, it may be another dark ages like what happened at the end of the Roman Empire, where when the Roman Empire fell, the European continent fell into the fucking Stone Age again.
But I mean, just these guys even making that statement in 97 about civil violence, cracking up geographically, like that's starting to occur already. I mean, we're starting to see a trend. And I know we've kind of, maybe this did end up being the bullshit session. I don't know. And that's okay because I enjoy it. But it's like people are already starting to gather in ideologically harmonious enclaves, for example. Like it's crazy. Like I was looking at politics in even the 1990s. Like I think a good example is the Clinton impeachment votes, where you had Republicans and Democrats crossing the aisles to vote every which way on that.
Yeah.
Like you had multiple Republicans supporting Clinton, you had several Democrats voting against him. And in this day and age, you just wouldn't see that anymore.
Listen
You
here.
wouldn't see.
Listen here, people. Don't worry. There is no reason to fear. We are from the government and we're here to help you.
Helfen Sie.
As long
We
as
are
you
here to
keep
help.
line. As long as you
Not
keep
mine.
line.
Well, and that's what, Reagan, that was his quote, obviously. And then he also made the comment that, liberty, I'm paraphrasing now, but liberty is not passed on through the bloodstream. It's something that has to be instructed. It has to be molded in children in the next generation. And he said, liberty is only one generation away from extinction.
Yep.
Because again, it's not a natural mindset. It's really not.
The tree of liberty must be periodically watered with the blood of patriots.
And
Yeah, tyrants and patriots and tyrants. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think all this goes to show that I think that's why we're seeing this whole Ukraine thing, and it is a matter of history, because the people who want this radical change to the social order need either a major war or something even worse, a nuclear exchange. maybe what they're trying to do is to goad, because there's been plenty of articles over the years talking about how Russia is willing to use tactical nuclear weapons, suitcase bombs. They keep talking about it. Now, maybe that's Russia itself putting out that information, or maybe it's paranoid liars in the Western propaganda press doing that. But I feel like they're trying to goad them into damn well doing it. Because what's a couple of 100,000 dead people if you get your way? Nothing. It's nothing at all to have some dead people. Not for them. Because these people are soulless, godless, just evil people.
Well, these are
who would happily tap.
These are the same 13 bloodlines that have been running the world since the dawn of time. So it's the same people.
Yeah.
Yeah, just overall sinister ass evil people. So that's why more people need to be willing to speak up, like those brave countries in Europe now saying, hey, it's time to cool the jets and back away from this thing.
Hey Ben,
before things worsen.
How hard do you think it would be for us normal people to snuff out those bloodlines?
I mean, I think eventually you need some rogue SEALs, Raiders, and Rangers to do it for us. But yeah.
We're going on a trip to a place called Auschwitz. It is shower time.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I mean, these, and that'd be a great actually topic for another time, or the Nuremberg trials, going over that, because that's an example of how you hold evil people accountable for their actions. And like all these scumbags, like you put it on pay-per-view, if that's even still a thing, or HBO,
But
whatever.
do you believe that these people deserve trials? Like Soros and the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and
I mean, ideally, yes.
Bill Gates.
But see, that was
Bill Gates is responsible for okay. This is mostly going to be on YouTube, so I gotta allude to it a little bit, but Bill Gates is responsible for the hokey pokey, mostly, right?
Yeah, him and Fauci and multiple other people.
When this is all said and done, they're gonna be responsible for billions of dead. They deserve a trial.
Well, as long as the trial has
purification,
because that was the thing. No, as long as the trial is based upon prerequisites, like as long as we go on the original Nuremberg standard, yes.
I think they need a trial like what William Wallace got in Braveheart. They must be purified by pain.
Because that was the thing with Nuremberg, which is what a lot of people bitched about. It's like, because there's a whole theory in law of like natural law versus, written law, and natural law was, a more just law was seen to have triumphed at Nuremberg. So if you go on the actual Nuremberg standards, yeah, of course they need to be tried for the world to see. Like people need to hear how they mass murdered millions of human beings with their and maimed countless millions of others.
Well, can we at least go through all that with them in the rack? Where we can
I'm not opposed. And that's the thing. That's the thing with these that's this thing with these insane people. It's like, again, let's just kind of a stream of consciousness here, but you make millions of people desperate and have nothing left to live for. You're creating the situation for unparalleled violence. Like, I think about the French Revolution, and it's like those people what was it, the 4 estates or the 3 estates? I forget how many estates it was that were in unison with the king. And then it's like they failed to help feed people, for example. And then those starving people led a revolution, which resulted in the king's death and the assassination of multiple nobles. And it's like, then they established their own new order. So it's like,
Did you see those guys that were walking around in DC like pushing a almost looked like a parade float that looked like gallows?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Where was it? When was this?
It wasn't that long ago, maybe a week or two ago. I don't know. It was funny though.
But yeah, I think we're definitely in the crisis stage of that 20 years. And actually, so did those guys. They said the same thing, and it's funny. That began in the beginning of the second Bush term, which absolutely makes sense.
Well, like the only discrepancy I really see with the fourth turning thing is the period between the Civil War and World War II, because it was, what was it, 50, well, like 50 years between the Civil War and World War One, right?
Yep.
And then World War One followed closely by the Great Depression, and then followed closely by World War II after, well, maybe even during the tail end of the Depression. So that was fucking what, 40 years of straight crisis.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. No theory's perfect, but generally speaking, and well, let me go back to like those stages, because I mean, again, there was major rebirths at the end of all that. I mean, look at America, for example, how we changed. Like, obviously, after in 1783, 1781 was the Treaty of Paris, right? Or 1783, that's when it was. So Britain finally recognizes us as an independent republic of several sovereign states. Because again, these United States made a treaty with the British Crown, not one solitary unitary state. Then 80 years later, you have the Civil War, and America changes forever. It went from these United States to the United States. I mean, look, slavery is obviously horrible. It's anti-liberty. And no one has to mourn the destruction of slavery, but we also the Republic was lost at the end of that war. The original Republic was gone. And then what happens 80 years later? We go from just regular old America, the United States, to the world superpower. We were changed forever. Changed forever after the end of
The
World War
world's
II.
sole superpower for
Well,
decades.
I wouldn't say we were changed forever, because we're about to be we're going to be knocked down a peg or two here in the coming.
Well, and that's still a change. That's still gonna, like, we'll never be, but like Britain never got back on top again after the World Wars. So, like, well, I guess in World War One it was relatively
I think
stabilized despite losing so many men. But I mean, the fact
I
is,
think if we survive this situation coming up as a nation, I think we'll be back on top within a decade. But
I don't think so.
but
Like, well, no, like,
that's if we survive it. It's
well,
all
no, like,
in this situation.
even if we survive it, I mean, the social unity is gone. Like, we are not a unified country anymore.
Well, we will be, because one whole side took the hokey pokey. So,
Well, okay, and maybe if that ends up coming to pass, sure, then you're right, then we will be. But barring that, look, anecdotally, I haven't seen anyone drop out with health issues. I mean, I'm sure other people have. I'm not saying they're not. I personally never took the thing because I didn't trust it, and I'm proud of that decision. I'm just saying I haven't seen all my leftist coworkers knocking off yet, one by one.
it's starting to happen though.
And maybe so, and maybe that's more so with the boosters. I don't know. Some of them were boosters.
It is more so with the boosters. People
Because
that are triple.
Because a lot of them quietly just decided they weren't going to take the boosters. Like, obviously they kept public face by still waving their stupid fucking believe science signs, but silently they stopped taking it. Actually,
I won't even take the first one. Fuck that.
People
Well,
that
no,
are
neither did I. But
the
I think a
people that
lot
are
of them,
dropping, most of them are the ones that tripled down and quadrupled down on it. So
Hey, for any of you out there that have any doubts, the three of us here, none of us have had it. And I'm pretty sure that none of our children have had it. And we're all perfectly healthy. We're fine. We're still here. We didn't die.
yeah,
but I mean, the point
the
is,
science people. According to them, we should have been dead 2 years ago.
Yep.
according to all them science people, I should have took a dirt nap 30 years ago.
But I'm still here. And they keep
And I keep living and they keep dying. Fucking
That was
grumpy old.
that's probably the best fucking movie ever, dude.
That, especially that one little bit of dialogue right there.
He's
And
like,
from
"That's
my
right. And for lunch, I eat a plate of bacon. A whole
whole
damn
damn, and then I drink my dinner.
According to all those doctors and the brainiac,
And them flat-bellied experts
I should have been taking a dirt nap 30
30
years
years
ago.
ago.
But I keep living and they keep dying.
It just goes to show you. It goes to show you what the hell are you talking about? Well, you said you eat bacon and drink beer, and that the people who said you should. They're like, I just like that story. But no, look, I mean, so my whole point is, I don't think it's going to be as drastic of an ideological difference as we would expect. Because we're going to have phantom. Like, here's the thing, again, stream of consciousness here. We no longer have free and fair elections, so 90% of leftists could die, and they'll still win national elections because of phantom voters. So that's a fact, Jack. So yeah, as much as we could have 90% control in reality, but they're not going to give it up. So regardless, there's no coming back. Like, even, yeah, like if we survive this thing, great, but we're going to survive it in enclaves of, like, Florida, for example, conservative areas of quote unquote blue states, like upstate New York.
Hey, you know what, Ben?
Right.
We're all going to be set financially too, because we can sell our seed for 20,000 a pop.
Dude, I sent you all that link for that Swiss. Like, it's a real Swiss blood bank, dude. I checked the site; it's fucking real. They're gonna, like,
pure
seek out pure blood.
Pure blood sperm is going for like between 16 and 20 grand a pop.
Hey, and we have good genetics too, being rooted in the old republic. So we should even double down on that. Like,
I
you want
wasn't
some of that?
kidding. Like, ever since the Hokey Pokey came out, I've been posting that meme periodically, saying, what's it say? Roses are red, so is uncooked loin. And it's a roses are red, so is uncooked loin. Unvaxxed sperm is the next Bitcoin.
But I mean, to kind of tie all this together, because I know it's a history hour, but look, politics just ties into history.
Hey Ben, don't
Yeah.
lowball me. I know what I got.
One, I think about the fact that it's like, we also have good roots in the republic too. So it's like we should add an extra 10 grand. It's like, you want some of that Patriot seed? Get $5,000 more dollars.
Hey, we're the what do you call it? The grandsons, like 15 times removed of liberty.
Well, we are, and that's why these people want to exterminate the native population. Because when you have people with roots like that, there's going to be resistance. And that's what all this fourth turning stuff is about too, with these people who want the New World Order. They want just a permanent slave class. That's what 2030 is about. And enslaving populations is nothing new. It's not like this is anything novel. You've had tyrants doing this for millennia. Think about Xerxes versus the Spartans.
Yeah, and they want us all penned up in our 15-minute cities, where if we want to leave our 15-minute perimeter, we have to fucking ask permission from the government. And you only get like 3 or 4 times that you can use that in your lifetime. So, yeah, who the fuck wants to live like that?
Well, I mean, recent history, recent history shows us that a substantial percentage of our so-called fellow citizens absolutely wouldn't mind living like that. They love having the boot on their neck.
Well, those people
So,
are lazy, and
Yeah. And then we'd be the ones living in the sewers under the city, coming out at night to burn and to burn and destroy what they built.
hey, for all you lazy fucks out there, just so you know, almost nothing that's worthwhile in life is fucking easy. So quit being fucking lazy and go out there and make shit happen.
so I mean, again, all of this is interconnected. It might seem a bit of stream of consciousness. It might be people might not be seeing the connections, but it is all connected. And the fact is, it's an age-long dispute between liberty and tyranny. At the end of the day, there are no parties. Like I consider myself still an American nationalist to an extent of the old American Republic. But like I have more in common with a liberty lover in China and Russia and Ukraine and Ireland and wherever they live than I do with leftists in this country. Because it's not about borders anymore. It's not about even party. There's treasonous Republicans, and I guarantee you, somewhere out there, there's actually some decent Democrats who are actual patriots.
Well,
So
I'm
it's liberty versus tyranny now.
yeah, I'm an originalist. If everything could go back to the way it was intended, then everything would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you right now, when or if the shit ever came to pass and the shit went down here, I mean, i if you weren't somebody that was on the side of liberty and freedom, I will give no quarter,
Well, yeah, there
and
will
I
be
will
no mercy.
expect none,
There will be no mercy for you.
and I will expect none in return. But I'm definitely not giving any.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like the patriots of the revolution, the leaders knew that they were going to hang for for their treason. I mean, it was treason against a lawful government authority. So that's what I love when people try to get all wishy-washy and like,
Yeah, but it's only treason if you lose.
well, no, I mean, it was treason
Right.
against the lawful authority. I mean, now that lawful authority had isolated itself from the people, due to their arrogance, due to the distance of governmental powers from the average lives of people. But it's like but they knew they were going to hang. Now, I kind of think about this a lot, and it's like I think the South gave up kind of relatively easily in the Civil War because they knew they wouldn't be they knew they wouldn't face ultimate punishment for the revolt. So, but now we live in an age where people would happily mass murder. I think tens of millions, if not all of us, for our dissent. And so it's going to have to be a revolutionary war mindset, or even a what's his name, Vlad Dracula mindset, where it's like it's kill or be killed, baby. Like I think these people would happily see all of us die. Like that Greta Thunberg girl. Have you ever seen more vacant eyes in a human being?
No, I'm not sure she's
Like
human.
that's what I mean. I look at that girl and I know a lot of people see a dumb teenager, now an adult. It's like I see a girl who would happily watch billions of human beings perish.
Yeah, here's a
I do.
thing by Cicero. And I think I read this on one of our other podcasts, but kind of right up the alley of what we're talking about here. So, no man survives when freedom fails. The best men rot in filthy jails, and those who cry appease, appease are hanged by those they tried to please.
Yep, that's basically how it goes.
Yeah, and I mean, here's one of the good things about I think Musk taking over Twitter because at least you can see more of these issues being discussed in a relatively free environment. Like, everybody listening should just like do a search by in quotations of 15-minute cities, and you're seeing this conversation occur everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's all over the place.
So I mean, yeah, I think those social scientists probably were on the right track. I think their timeline seems to make sense to me. Obviously, no theory is perfect. Kind of to tie it all together. So I guess I'll just close out with that. The people should look into the fourth turning, see how it relate in history, and just brace for impact, because obviously we've unraveled this, like, it's crazy. We're almost 50-50 now on everything. Like, for example, the military used to have the support of the vast majority of the population. It used to be the most trusted, beloved institute in the country. Now because of its actions, it's lost the support of tens of millions of Americans, especially Americans who would have been willing to serve. And now I don't think they will. I really think a lot of people are going to forego any sort of service now, which is dangerous.
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, which is dangerous. So I at least encourage anyone listening, if that's you, to at least get training anyhow, some training, whether it's, through, there's a great organization called American Partisan. They do actual live trainings in North Carolina and elsewhere. Get training somehow and brace for impact, because things are probably going to worsen before they get better.
Well, bare minimum, buy a firearm and get training on how to use that firearm.
Yep.
So sometime between now and the year 2025, Americans are going to be at a crossroads where they choose liberty or to careen off that cliff into 1,000 years of darkness.
Yep. And now I've shared this opinion multiple times where it's like, because again, I'm a Christian. Christ said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." I've told people just straight up, it's like, let's just go our separate ways and live how we want to live. Because then, and people are like, well, you can't do that. You'd have to go, like, even Texas and Florida have divisions, for example. It's like, yeah, that's my point. It's like, this is going to be on a county, town, and probably even in some cases a neighborhood level, where it's like, yeah, we just peace out. There's no need for unnecessary violence, let's just let what we can embrace the liberty path, and you all can embrace the 1,000 years of darkness in your own communities. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. Because, like, again, if 2022 was a recent history lesson, it showed that millions of our neighbors love having a boot on their neck, repeatedly stepping on it. They're fine with that. And
the Chaz showed us that these lefties can't govern themselves, because within a few days they'll be begging the conservatives for food because they ran out.
And I'm fine with that. And I'll kind of close here with these remarks, because again, 2025. Like, I mean, just look at the political divisions now. It's going to get even worse after 2024, because I predict no matter who the Republicans put up, they're going to lose. It could even be DeSantis, and he will lose. Why? Because of phantom. Now, look, when I say phantom voters, I'm not saying every Democrat's fake. I think actually the vast majority of their votes are real. I think they actually legitimately do win several states, like Massachusetts, for example, California. I think they do. But there's key states where they use phantom voters to win, so they can have a national victory. And after 2020,
the figures I heard was in the 2020 election, 25 million votes were manufactured.
And I believe that. So that would still mean a majority of the votes are still coming from real people, which is horrifying. And that means they love that. That's their values. So that's what I mean. After 2024, things are only going to worsen. And look what 2025 culminates in. The next inauguration is in 2025.
Well, I've said this before. And I think we should switch our elections to blockchain. And the reason why is everybody gets an election wallet, everybody is airdropped one coin, and you deposit that coin into the account of the person you want to vote for. You only get one.
I mean, yeah,
And it's all
I'm for whatever,
but it's all trackable
whatever's
and
verifiable.
traceable in real time.
You can't defraud that. Like if you weren't gonna vote and you sent your coin to someone else that wanted it, that's on the blockchain. It's all logged. It's there that you sent that coin to someone else and they put it in another wallet.
Yep. It can't be cheated. It's 100% traceable in real time.
Because you know
And
what's
it's all-
crazy? Even I remember in 2020, there was even an article in the Washington Post which talked about how mail-in balloting was used in the 1864 election to, kind of cheat Lincoln out of a victory. So they were even admitting that in 1864, mail-in balloting was there were efforts to defraud the system in order to change the election outcome. So it's like, and again, I'm not even trying to get political at this point. I'm just making a note that in line with this theory, 2025 is their estimated year, and 2025 is also the next inauguration, where I think we're going to see an even more radical shift than what we've seen so far.
Well,
So yeah, look, at the end of the day, yeah, look, there's two paths. One is liberty, and one is, as Ronaldo said, is careening off into that 1,000 years of blissful darkness. And I'm perfectly fine if those in the metropolitan areas want their years of darkness. What we do is we just peace out. We have our own liberty states. They can have their North Korean states. Most of them will starve to death. And the rest who are survivors will come begging to us. And what we do is this. We first take over their territories. We revoke their governing charters. We arrest their leaders. We make them swear oaths. We put them all under ideological detoxification. And then, maybe that's a period of 10 or even 20 years. Who knows? It might be a century before they'll ever be back to normal. But that's what we do. Because you can't have a normal union with these people. Like, this current situation ain't going to fly, Jack. Now, I've said a million times I don't want the country to break up at the same time. So the best thing to do is maybe just to be a loose military confederation. That's it. No domestic policies have to be shared. No,
well, the only
nothing.
issue I have is there's no way to coexist with these people.
And I agree, but at the same time, I can't be. Yeah,
they're ideologues. It's a cult for them. It's a religion.
oh, I agree. Oh no, it definitely is a religion.
Yeah, and there is no coexisting with them. Either you conform to them or they want you dead. And that's that's just.
And I'll conclude with this because I know we've gone on for a while. Is that?
Huh?
Oh, I don't know. I was hearing something, but anyhow, no. A great, actually, something we should talk about on this note is the Chinese Cultural Revolution and their attack on the four old things, or I think it was called the four old things, but basically four religious and organizing principles of ancient Chinese society and how they destroyed those four things in the Cultural Revolution. So, it's shocking how that Chinese Cultural Revolution is being emulated by today's rabid, insane leftist student population and the movements that fund them.
Yeah, I just think that like your scenario you laid out for how we deal with them as far as the city guys go, the city people, it could be a little bit flawed because all of that's predicated on the assumption that they will remain in the city.
Yeah, but once we break our sticks, we establish border guards and basically turn people back. Like, we're not going to have the same free movement of people.
But when things collapse, we may only have a few days to do that before they come running and fleeing from the cities in search of food and shelter elsewhere.
And what you do is blockade the highways or the bridges that lead out of their cities. Like, we're gonna have to blockade and form Like we're gonna have to have human barriers, and even
blow the
establish maybe have
bridges and blow the bridges and block the highways and be done with it.
like, because yeah, I mean, and that's like we're gonna have to watch out with that, and even in our own communities, because you're gonna have backstabbers in rural conservative America as well. I mean, that's what's terrifying about the idea of a collapse. And I don't welcome a collapse. I really don't. I'm not like fantasizing about it. I don't want it to happen. But obviously, I have two big fears. One is the collapse of the medical availability, which will mean millions of people who would have been kept alive in ordinary times dying from preventable matters. I mean, especially those who need
Well, yeah, I
substantial.
mean, in that kind of scenario, the tiniest little cut could be fatal because
It's like on Family Guy when Chris, it was like in the 1700s, Chris got a splinter, so, and he was like, "It's nice knowing you all."
Yep, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even those who need substantial medical interventions, like, God bless them, those poor kids at like St. Jude's, for example, like that shit gives me nightmares. It really does. And then the second is the formation of, with the collapse of society in general, is the formation of militias, because that can go one of two ways. One, you have a militia formed by moral people who uphold the sense of basic justice. And then you have militias based off of modern leftist principles, which means there is no rule of law.
Thuggery.
So yeah, tomfoolery abounds.
Skullduggery.
And they're just raping and looting left and right and forming essentially a Mad Max society.
Yep.
So,
and I think that's actually the more likely scenario.
well, I agree, because like,
especially in America.
Well, again, that's where I point out, I don't care what people's, people like the collapse of faith is going to feed into those kind of militias, because now there's no moral foundations necessary. It's all about, the only morality is survival. And at that point, anything goes in terms of justifying survival. So, yeah, that's what worries me the most.
Well, I could tell you this: I would never steal food or survival supplies from a group of women and children to help myself live. I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Unless they offered it to me, said, "Here, have a bite." I'd be like, "All right, cool." But if I would never steal it from them, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I mean, we're moral guys, we're good guys, but the fact is, all the moochers out there who are going to find themselves without the ability to mooch anymore are going to follow the leadership of someone who will apparently restore that dignity and pride that they lost in their taking abilities, and they will do anything.
You got the Mr. X's of the world that actually have a plan to, when the collapse comes, the Mr. X's of the world actually want to go out and be lawless bandits. So,
yeah, I mean, and that's where, yeah, maybe we have a few topics. Like, I think collapse of the Roman Empire and how, what that might look like in the modern age. I think that's an interesting topic as well down the road.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of people, especially now in America, I think most of them will probably be dead inside of 3 months.
I agree. And look, I'm not some super, like right now in my current state, I wouldn't do well. So I'm trying to change my regimens now, like working out more, eating better, prepping better. And that's the thing with all these people who are jam packed in the cities. Like, I don't know why developers are obviously donating to campaign coffers and getting more contracts to build. But it's like, all that land could have gone to sustaining people at one point. Now it's fucking gone at present. Doesn't mean we can't reclaim it. But at present, it's not there to feed all these mouths.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing, because once the supply chain goes, like, I think all these people who think that food comes from a grocery store are in for a bad deal.
Well, just remember, Ben, I'm not far away. Safety in numbers, buddy.
I know it, but I'm just saying we're both of us are within striking distance of millions of zombies. So
That's what they are now.
I know, but once you take away,
the only difference is when this shit hits the fan, they're going to be ravenous zombies.
well, that's what I'm talking about. They're benign zombies right now. Then they'll become malignant zombies.
But the good thing is I'm probably a day's walk from my house, maybe a day and a half tops, from a very, very defensible position.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you, I mean, I don't even think 50 cal mounts are good enough. I think you need CWIS mounts now.
No, but I mean, what are you going to do when you take out all the road access to very, very rough terrain?
True.
Yeah.
Most of these fat prick city slickers, they're not going to make their way up there. Not without roads to walk on.
My roads. Who's going to take care of my roads?
Yeah,
there ain't going to be no roads.
Right. I dig giant fucking ditches across the road.
That's what explosives are for, buddy. You don't need to dig ditches.
Well, that's what I mean.
We need government. We need roads.
Get a couple thousand tannerite, you'll take care of any road.
I'm not saying actually dig them, but yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of good topics here that we could feed off of, but I think, how should we close this out?
Any way you'd like, Ben. This is your baby.
No, it's not. It's your program. I'm just. It's your circus. I'm just a clown.
Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah, if anyone's even listening at this stage, I mean, it might seem like random stream of. It might seem like a bunch of random stream of consciousness, but all this stuff really, and I've overused the term by now, but it really is interconnected. Like people think these are all random events are insane. Like all these things are coming to pass, and they all are seeming to converge simultaneously. So learn from history that nefarious actors will, at certain levels are probably compelling people to hate each other and fight each other. And that's what they did in the world wars, especially World War I. They all got us to slaughter each other, average people, to kill each other for no good reasons.
Well, and maybe
and then
coming up really is the Battle of Armageddon, Apocalypse, Book of Revelations.
Well, I'll say this with the destructive technologies in human hands today. Like now one can see how Revelations is possible, because obviously, 100 years ago, actually 100, 20, 30, whatever years ago, people couldn't have fathomed the level of technology required to make Revelations possible, or the numbers of humanity.
Well, yeah, it talks about in Revelation, it talks about the the waters being poisoned, the mountain or the whatever, stars fall from the sky and destroy this, that, and the other, and the ships.
Yeah, when I read that,
like
stars falling from the sky, I immediately thought of warheads.
Well, yeah, and a nuke fight would do all of that. It would destroy the ships. It would destroy. It would make the water poison because of the radiation. It would make it like all of that would be possible just with a nuke fight.
Yeah.
And again, I pointed this out before. It talks about at one point an army of 200 million. And in previous generations, that number would have been highly impossible. But now it's very probable and very potential, given the human population hitting 8 billion. So yeah, these things are within the realm of possibility. And maybe it's all destined to happen. Maybe the Calvinists are right and shit's predestined. And, we just got to go along for this ride to its natural conclusion. The only difference is we don't know what time it all happens. It could be 100 years from now. It could be 1,000 years from now. Who knows?
So, yeah, I'm predicting it's going to be within the next year or two.
It could be next week, for all you know.
But that's why places like Maine are good to be. There's no major targets there. So, find whoever's listening, find a state that doesn't have major targets in it and get there.
Yeah, me
Like California.
Ben are right in the middle of the shit.
well, a quarter of the
Don't come to
Navy.
Maine. We've already had a mass exodus enough up here during COVID. So
Well, I gotta check on something real quick. So just clock us out when you're ready.
We're
Yeah.
ready to vominos anyway. So
I'm ready to bail.
yeah. So
We beat this horse enough.
yeah, we have beat this horse quite a bit, actually. What are we going on, like 2.5 hours? Anyway,
Whatever. It was a fun history and bullshit session. I enjoyed it. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. No, you shitting, yeah.
oh girl, snap into a Slim Jim.
I don't know if anybody's noticed, but we haven't been doing the Supernatural podcast anymore. Reason being, kind of running out of things to talk about. So, I think we're going to be switching over more to this, and I think we may be doing some smaller, shorter videos, mostly just for YouTube for the Supernatural angle. You know our reaction videos where we watch the ghost videos or whatever when we react to them. We're going to be doing we're going to start doing some shorter videos of that. Maybe next week. I'm not sure.
Get on with it.
Get on with it. So then, also we're still at supernaturalbeerbros@gmail.com. Also SBB Pod on Instagram. And get on with it. And,
Well, don't. It's like those miserable psalms. They're so depressing. Knock it off.
what are you doing now? I'm averting my eyes, Lord. Well, stop it.
Oh, and Jenkins, apparently your mother died this evening, Chaplain.
All right, so this has been Beer Bros History Hour. End of the world, and we're signing out.